¿Cómo estamos, mi gente? Let's get the energy up. Let's do this. I'm thrilled to be here today with so many sort of friends, colleagues, clients. Coca-Cola, Telemundo, NFL are in the room. I'm honored to be collaborating with all of you. It's been an incredible day so far of fascinating conversation and dialogue, but now we're turning to kind of a conversation that could not be more critical, the future. Basically, our next panel, Beyond the Game, Financial Empowerment for the Next Generation, is all about student athletes and how we can explore leadership, education, and opportunities and how those come to life. I think, the athletes of today need to be trained for the careers and skill sets of tomorrow, and it's really evolving, as we all know. You've got college athletics evolving tremendously with NIL, or name, image, and likeness, and those deals are opening doors, of course, for those student athletes, but at the same time, we need to equip them on how they handle this influx of capital and arm them with the financial tools that they're going to need to navigate with confidence. So this panel is going to explore financial education, strategic partnerships, real-life experience that these student athletes need to build wealth, manage opportunity, and shape their own economic trajectory both on and off the field. To help me unpack all of this, we've got an incredible panel. Micah, Croom, financial representative at Northwestern Mutual and former student athlete at USC, who obviously brings some firsthand experience in all of these topics that are of critical importance. He's translated lessons from the field to financial literacy. Patty Juarez, Executive Vice President of Growth Segments for Wells Fargo. She brings more than 30 years of experience at the bank, leading growth segments across advancing financial literacy, empowerment, supporting businesses, development, marketing, and enhancing leadership representation nationwide. She's really involved in a lot of amazing organizations, some of which are here today, serving on the board of the U.S. Hispanic Chamber, Hispanic Scholarship Fund, Latino Donor Collaborative, and she's obviously a very respected voice on access to capital, multicultural, and more. Another round of applause for Patty. Javier Gutierrez is a man who has many titles: Chairman and CEO of Impact X Sports, former CEO of the Arizona Coyotes, the only Latino CEO in NHL history, my brother from another mother, and more often than not today, he's known as Javi's father. A round of applause. And last but certainly not least, to moderate this incredible panel today, Michelle Caruso Cabrera, CNBC contributor and CEO of MCC Global Enterprises. Michelle made history when she became the first Latina CNBC anchor and has spent more than 30 years covering global markets and these types of trends. Help me welcome Michelle.
Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited about this panel. It's a whole new world for college athletes, right? NIL, name, image, likeness. They can make some money. This is so different. I used to cover the Olympics for CNBC, and no kidding, the kids would have to put tape on any symbols that were on their sneakers or on their shirts because they would get punished by the International Olympic Committee if they had any sponsorship visible anywhere. So this is a dramatic change which opens up lots of financial opportunities for athletes, and we of course want Latinos to get as much of that as they richly deserve, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about the just what the numbers are. I mean, this is pretty incredible. More than 500,000 NCAA athletes are playing at the college level, and 2/3 of the Olympic team that went to Paris for the Olympics came from college programs. What does this tell you about what the opportunity is, both for the industry and for the students themselves? Javier, let me start with you.
Sure. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to take a point of personal privilege and start by thanking so many people as a member of the advisory board. I have to start with Dominica. Thank you so much for your leadership and for all of this. To all the fellow board members who, when we were talking about what do we need to do in Los Angeles, which is to highlight Los Angeles as the center of sports and the importance, many of you have heard me say this with Latinos in sports. Sports are important, and Latinos are important to sports. Let me say that again. Sports are important, and Latinos are important to sports. Thank you. And today's conversation only highlights that. to this point of this whole new world, I think it's long overdue to understand that when you think of the ecosystem of sports, you have the sports entities, the teams, the leagues, the universities. You have all the partners, the corporate partners, the media partners, the merchandise, F&B facilities, and then you have the athletes. And what we have not talked enough about is how do you empower these athletes, not just at the college level, but beyond. You know, when I had the fortune of sitting in the chair as the first Latino CEO in the NHL, Juan Toscano Anderson, the first Mexican American to win an NBA title with the Warriors, called me. And he said, I need to know how I create wealth. How do I build for my family, for the next generation? Because my career is short and I have a title, but I want to do not only for myself, but for my community. And that happened often, so much so that it was part of the impetus when we launched Latinos in Sports, in elevating and highlighting the importance of Latinos in sports. We wanted to help these athletes, right? And to really highlight the fact that they're the ones driving all of this economic activity. They're the ones who are influencing culture, and they're the ones who bring us together as a community asset. So when we think about this, and there's a lot of folks who don't like the fact that maybe college athletes aren't getting paid, for many, they are the ones who are driving this magic dust that sprinkles across sports. And so I think it's long overdue. I think it's very exciting. And I think for all of you here who are in this room who actually deploy capital into the sports ecosystem, you need to think about Latinos and Latinas as the athletes that you want to back. And we'll talk about people like Aaliyah Chavez, the #1 women's basketball recruit in the nation. Kareem Lopez, who will be drafted in the top 10 in the NBA. How many of you have even heard of them, let alone willing to back them? And those are the conversations that I think are so exciting, and we're at the nascent stage to do that. And I would be remiss if right here I did acknowledge Doreen Dominguez, the first Latina owner in the NBA. Doreen. We need to see more of that as well. That's a whole, we can get into a whole nother conversation about that. So,
Micah, you are a student athlete. By the way, he goes by Croom. I'm going to call you Croom, right? Right? It's not an insult.
Yeah.
Croom.
You know where that works? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great question, and wow, very hard to follow that. I concur with everything that he said. I also want to take a personal interest and say thank you, Dominica, for allowing me to share this platform. I understand that even though, regardless of background, I think a lot of the challenges that we're seeing in today's time and a lot of some of these upcoming hurdles, there are shared pain points. So to be able to put multiple minds in the room and kind of work through these, I'm always grateful for that. So thank you for having me. To answer your question, I think from the institution or business owner standpoint, I think a lot of them are already beginning to do it, but it's very similar to if somebody were to invest into, let's say, a mid-cap, right? A mid-cap, for people who are bankers in the room, there's 9 different asset classes, but there's large, mid, and small. And so a lot of times small and mid are sometimes they're some of those companies that they're not necessarily incumbent, but they're on the brink of it, right? They may not be the Amazon today, but we feel like they have a chance in 10 years or 15 years that they may become that. I think with collegiate athletes, I think it's practically adjacent. There are so many different talents from across the world and the globe that are just now reaching the plateau of their talent, right? And so for companies to go ahead and stand alongside them and do it in the right way and make sure that they're empowered and educated as well, I think is a great opportunity on both ends of that exchange. I think for athletes, I think, it goes without saying, this is the most unprecedented time for us, for all athletes, to finally be compensated for the work that you've put in thus far, right? So there are certain hotbeds within the country, whether it be California or Texas or Florida, where not only the athlete, but the support system behind the athlete pours so much into that kid or that daughter getting there, right? It's going from soccer camps to football camps to track meets, and that may start from age 6 all the way up until 18 or 21. And now we're at an opportunity to where parents as well as athletes are finally able to see some of that rate of return a little bit earlier. So I think just building with these institutions is a great opportunity, but in the same point or token, being educated about what we're getting into and what are some of the consequences is just as imperative, I would say.
Patty, Wells Fargo actually launched a financial education content series for student athletes. You clearly understood that this was a moment that you had to meet. Tell me about how you and the bank think about this particular moment.
Yeah, I share in the prior thoughts about the exciting momentum that is building and the exciting time that it is to see these athletes start creating wealth, and we want them to keep it. So we partner with an organization called Game Plan. They have the leading learning management system, and they provide athletic organizations across the country with a suite of courses in different topics, and it includes not just financial literacy, but mental health, gambling, sexual violence prevention, etc. And we partner with them on financial literacy. And the reason we did that is because we understand that in order for these athletes to keep that wealth and grow that wealth, they need to manage their finances, in a way that maybe they're not used to, maybe they don't know, maybe they're the first ones in their family to have this kind of wealth. And so what we did is we designed a series of courses that are very appropriate to each year they are in college, whether they're a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, a senior. And the topics cover the gamut, from financial tips to savings, debt management, preparing for big purchases, and handling the ability to handle financial pressure. And so far, over 50,000 of the courses have been taken, and there's over 100 schools that are joining with us in providing this curriculum to the athletes. And I think that, for us, what we wanted to do is make sure that we help the athletes gain confidence and knowledge in managing their finances. It's the most important thing. Sometimes they're surrounded by people who can help them, and sometimes they're not. And so for us to be able to provide a platform that really teaches them that financial literacy, that really goes into detail about the things that they can do, only helps them build the wealth and, build wealth for the long run. And so we're very excited about this platform.
Micah, go back in time to when you were the student athlete. How much did you know? How much did you not know? I mean, now you're a financial advisor, so you know a lot.
I better know.
You better know a lot. But what do you wish you'd known back then? And what to the parents of would-be athletes here, etc. What do you want to tell them?
Yeah, great question. Understanding that, hey, with what you have, whether it be through an NIL deal or a stipend, hey, how do I make sure that I'm splitting this into different pockets, right? If possible. Obviously, there's going to be day-to-day expenses, but how do I think a little bit ahead down the road, right? Obviously, I think for every athlete that comes in at a high level and goes to a high-level institution, especially that one of the focal points is sports, everybody wants to transition professionally, right? But we understand that's not always the case. I think the numbers and the data actually, they point to that.
Fewer than 2% of college athletes will go pro.
100%.
So if you're going to make money in college, that could be the only time
1,000%.
you make money. Yep.
Right? And so understanding, hey, how do I go ahead and stretch that the most efficient way possible? And a lot of times it's just for, at least in my point in time, during that time, it was just a lack of exposure. Outside any of the exposure that maybe myself or a colleague of mine may have proactively took, we didn't really have those openings or outlets at the time. So to have some of those people put in place, not only to have some of those people put in place, but I think the second kind of pillar behind that is to have people put in place that represent and kind of reflect some of the athletes that we're bringing up into the community. I think that definitely builds a little bit more rapport and comfort for certain people, families and athletes alike, being able to talk to somebody or speak to somebody about, hey, what are some decisions that I should make with some of these opportunities? And to have that conversation with somebody that maybe comes from a similar background or a similar community, it kind of eases having some of those uncomfortable conversations.
Javier, we've seen brand deals surge within college athletics. Tell us about some of the trends that you're seeing. What are the ways that deals are being structured, could be structured better? I mean, I think a lot of people saw the Nike movie and Michael Jordan's mother and the way she broke ground in terms of demanding that he get a future revenue stream of everything. I mean, we can all hope and dream, but what do the deals look like right now, and what could people be expecting?
So I'll really highlight a couple of things. First, I want to echo what Marisa said in terms of authenticity and storytelling are really driving a lot of these deals. So, some of you have been hearing my son Javi, who is a senior in high school, is interning for the first general manager of USC women's basketball, Selena Castillo, Latina, right? Yes, absolutely. She was here earlier today, and some of the conversations that they've been having is, how do we highlight these individuals for their story, for their background, their authenticity, having overcome, having had resiliency, having been, not what they are today, so that it can be relatable to everybody else. And that's what brands are looking for. And they're doing it in another thing that we've been hearing about today, which is in non-traditional media and content platforms. Everything that you see young people now consuming, it's on social media, it's digital, it's really in their hands. And so a lot of these deals now are, how do you monetize that? How do brands get so far into embedding themselves in a very personalized way? So some of the largest deals that you're seeing for, in particular, college athletes are for social media, are for marketing and branding, and they're really based on authenticity and really innovation. And you'd be surprised, it was just announced another USC women's basketball player was brought into the Nike fold. So now you have Juju Watkins, which I'm sure many of you have heard, who is probably the most recognizable women's basketball player other than this basketball player named Caitlin Clark. And really what is authentic about her, she's from LA. She stayed in LA for high school. She stayed in LA for college. She's rehabbing from a devastating ACL injury. And yet she's everywhere, right? State Farm and all these other brands that want that authenticity and want to do it in a very unique and very personalized way.
Social media is a double-edged sword.
Yes.
To what extent do you encourage athletes to build their own story on social media and fill that feed, which often is what you're much more likely to get a book deal if you have 1 million followers than if you have 1,000 followers, right?
No, absolutely. And by the way, it goes not just in college but also in pros, right? One of the things that we're going to announce is Latinos in Sports is going to take over the NFL Culture House the night before the Super Bowl.
Woo!
And one of the things we want to do is actually bring every Latino football player and highlight them, because most of them don't get highlighted. Will Hernandez in Arizona has been playing for, I believe, 9-10 years. He is the most recognizable offensive lineman from UTEP. Yes, Victor reminded me. Another text. Oh my God. But the point is that it's not just at the college level. It's really emphasizing what an amazing story. You got a kid from Texas who has been in the NFL for that long. Why don't we celebrate that? And emphasizing that in these distributed media forms is the best way to do so.
You've brought up women's basketball a couple times, so let's talk more about that. 19 million people tuned into the NCAA Women's Basketball Championship in 2024, outpacing the men's final by more than 4 million viewers.
Yes, absolutely.
How about that? What does that jump ball, what does it tell you about the untapped potential of women athletes?
It's growing, and I think you hit it on the head. There's a massive opportunity to tell a story. I think with sports, one of the greatest things that's a driver for a sense of nationalism behind sports is there are people from different communities or backgrounds or segments that are able to see that triumphant hero story, right? Or that David beats Goliath story, right? There's so many people that, whether it be, in Houston or in Atlanta or Miami, and hopefully it happens soon for them. Hopefully nobody's a Miami Dolphin fan here, but people will show up routinely Sunday after Sunday, year after year, because there's a sense of hope that this is the year. So the next, I truly believe, and I think other people do, do, the next intimate level of that is to be able to find that David and Goliath story in individuals, people that you can identify yourself in from similar backgrounds, similar triumphs, similar hurdles. And I think that kind of brings the stickiness not only for the nationalism of the team, but to build kind of that fan base, the campaign of the athlete as well. And it's just about, I think, leveraging it properly.
Patty, are you seeing a lot of women get on the panel? What's the on the platform that Wells Fargo created? What kind of metrics?
No, absolutely. I mean, we do, and 51% of our employees are are women, and over 18% of our employees are Latinos, and 65% of those are Latinas. So who runs the world? Exactly. Exactly. We're seeing dominance in Latinas starting businesses at a faster rate than anybody else. We're seeing, women, Latinas acquiring advanced education degrees at a higher degree than anybody else. So it is not a surprise. It is not surprising to us to see, Latinas on the rise in sports as well. And this is just the beginning. And I feel like we want to be there to provide that financial backing and the financial literacy that's needed to ensure that people are planful for the future, not just today, and that they continue to build their wealth. Because, as we said, if they're not going to go pro, right, and this is their biggest opportunity to make money, then how do you then save that money and make it grow, right? And so we want to be there to have those crucial conversations with these athletes.
You've run, you were in charge of a lot of diverse segments at Wells Fargo. How much similarity do you see in creating products for various diverse segments and student athletes? Is there a lot of similarity there in terms of trying to help preserve wealth, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I think through it all, right, through all of the segments, I mean, the point of what we're trying to do is help people succeed financially. And
storm coming.
Or my kid did something upstairs. Whoops. So what we want to do, obviously, what we want to see is help people succeed financially, and that's for all the segments. When we create products and when we're looking at things, we're looking at the needs of that particular segment or cohort. What is it that they're asking us to do? What is it about our products that's not accessible to them? Or how do we customize different things and then provide that so that they can really leverage those tools to their benefit in creating that prosperous financial future.
Several states are now mandating, actually, that student athletes receive financial literacy education.
Yes.
Good idea. I see you all kind of nodding your head. You think, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I think it should be a course before kids go to college. I think I see so much need in all the work we do for financial literacy. And when I teach classes to students that are about to go to college that come from unbanked families, they don't really know how their score is calculated. They don't know what they don't know. They don't know if they're going to get in trouble by opening a bunch of credit cards that are going to be thrown at their face as soon as they set foot on the college campus. So, we have to make sure that we're providing that education and those tips to help these students succeed. And in reality, I think financial literacy, it can be taught even earlier. I mean, I know we all have children, and many of you have children. And I mean, my 12-year-old already has a savings account. He has savings goals. He has budget. He has a budget. Sometimes he messes up a little and overspends, but he's learning that if he overspends today, then he won't have money tomorrow. And so all of those things we need to teach at an early age. And it's no different with athletes. I mean, some of them are coming from unbanked families, and so we need to make sure. And by the way, the largest percentage of unbanked households are in the Latino community and the Native American community. So we need to make sure that we're really coming to them with the resources that are needed to make sure they don't, go off the rails with all of a sudden having money and they don't really know how to preserve it.
Yes.
And if you don't mind me interjecting, one of the things we also have to talk about, not just after they have assets or after they have wealth, but also to pivot in terms of benefiting from the economic opportunity of sports, right? So you have a bunch of Latinos and Latinas that are in these colleges that could be part of the sports ecosystem that then is also benefiting these athletes. One of the things that Javi and I were talking about is why aren't Latinos actually looking at creating content for Latino athletes that then can be monetized, right? So when we've heard a lot about the sports ecosystem creating all of this economic activity, a lot of these athletes could then pivot, because the reality is this, as you just mentioned, they show up and they want to get to the league, whatever that league is. They then want to make money while they're doing that, and then when those two things don't work, they need a career. And what we would love to see is not just what happens after you make money. This could be a way for you to make money. And so what I'm hopeful is that whether it's colleges, whether it's those folks in this room here who have businesses or who can provide capital, that you encourage folks to take advantage of this as a career path for wealth creation.
Is there a way to measure the ROI of supporting an athlete or helping athletes?
It's a great question.
Or how do we think about the ROI? Is it all dollars and cents? Is it giving back to the community? What is it?
Yeah, I think outside of the dollars and cents, I think if we're looking at it from a high level, I think if corporations or institutions or small shops are doing right by communities and right by individuals, you build somewhat of an associate, whether it's during that business deal or transaction or that partnership. And over time, if you continue to do right by them, that associate becomes an ally. And so whether they segue out of their career, whether it be professionally or they go into a corporate field, if you continue to do right with them, I think that ally will eventually become an ambassador. And so I think in that ambassador piece is probably where we see that ROI, where you have people who have worked with certain companies before, built that rapport, understand the ins and outs of building, and feel even more confident and comfortable about referring them or opening the door to somebody else who's on the first spring of their journey. So I think a lot of it starts and ends by just doing the right thing with the right folks and just doing right by people.
We have time for one or two questions from the audience. This gentleman here in the front, is there a microphone? Have we got a microphone? I bet you're pretty loud.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and ask? Raul Perez. Great question.
You want to start?
Either or. It's I think, that's one of the recurring themes that I've been hearing echo here today, and I can't concur enough, is it's really, really taking the art of being a griot and telling somebody's story the right way. I think telling somebody's story from A to Z, highlighting the prominent points where we feel like, hey, these points are more relatable than anything else, and then putting it on the right platforms. And a lot of that just starts from the moral degree of, hey, how do we go ahead and highlight somebody's story and uplift them such that it brings and attracts the audience that we want? I think everything else kind of follows after the fact. So that's where I think we would start.
Where's Jeff Valdes? Here's here. He badgered me into pointing out that there are 4 Latino starting quarterbacks in college that are in the top 25. Okay. 4. How do you do it? I think it's 3 things. I think this room needs to know them, right? This room needs to know them, who they are. That's number 1. Number 2, we need to create stories around them that are relatable, right? Francisco Mendoza came from South Florida, got into Yale, turned it down, went to Cal, and then transferred to Indiana as a graduate student. That's an incredible story. That is the American dream. That is America, and taking full advantage of your opportunity. Those are great stories. And finally, those that are in this room that have brands, that have access, that can actually deploy capital, think about Latino stories, because those are American stories.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys.